The mountain hadn't changed in 12 years, but the man who lived on it had aged a lifetime. Josiah McKenna stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the sun bleed orange across the Colorado sky. His weathered hands gripped the Winchester rifle that had become more companion than weapon. At 43, his hair had gone mostly gray, matching the granite peaks that surrounded his one-room cabin. The wind carried the scent of pine and coming rain, but he barely noticed anymore. Everything smelled like memory these days. He turned back toward the cabin, its rough-hewn logs dark with age and weather. Smoke drifted from the stone chimney he'd built with his own hands, back when those hands had held smaller ones, gentler things. The door hung slightly crooked. He'd been meaning to fix that for 3 winters now. Seemed pointless when there was nobody to notice but him. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean. A narrow bed with a bear pelt cover, a table scarred by years of use, 2 chairs, though only one ever held weight anymore. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a small tin box, rusted at the corners. He hadn't opened it in 2 years, but he knew every item inside by heart. A wooden ring he'd carved from an aspen branch, a ribbon the color of prairie sky, a child's leather shoe no bigger than his thumb. Josiah poured coffee from the pot that perpetually sat on the coals. It was bitter and strong, the way he'd learned to like it, the way that didn't remind him of how Mary used to add wild honey to soften the taste, or how little Emma would beg for a sip, making faces at the bitterness while trying to be grown up like Papa. The fever had taken them in the span of a week. First Emma, her small body burning like kindling despite Mary's desperate prayers and cold compresses. Then Mary herself, as if she couldn't bear to let their daughter journey alone into whatever came after. He dug their graves with hands that shook not from cold, but from a grief so deep it felt like drowning in solid earth. That was 1871. Now it was 1883, and Josiah had become something between man and ghost, haunting his own life. He trapped in winter, hunted year-round, and twice a year made the 3-day journey to Creede to trade pelts and meat for supplies. The townsfolk knew him as the silent mountain man who paid fair and caused no trouble. Some of the older women looked at him with knowing pity, but he never stayed long enough for their sympathy to find words. His days followed a routine carved as deep as creek beds in stone. Rise before dawn, check the trap lines, hunt if the larder was low, repair what needed mending, watch the sunset, sleep when the memories allowed it. He'd learned to move through grief like a man walking on thin ice carefully, always forward, never stopping long enough to break through. The elk path below his cabin had grown over some, but he could still navigate it in full dark. His feet knew every root, every loose stone. This morning's trap run had yielded 2 rabbits and a fox with a pelt fine enough to fetch good trade. He skinned them efficiently, movements automatic after countless repetitions. The meat would last him near a week if he smoked it proper. As he worked, a golden eagle circled overhead, riding thermals up the mountain face. Josiah watched it briefly, remembering how Emma used to point at every bird, asking what it was, where it lived, why it flew so high. He'd made up stories sometimes when he didn't know the real answers. Mary would smile at his inventions, her eyes saying she knew but wouldn't spoil the magic. The memories were sharp as winter wind today. Some days they stayed buried deep enough to ignore. Other days, like this one, they rose up unbidden, each one a fresh cut across old scars. He'd thought time would dull them. 12 years should be enough to make a man forget the exact sound of his daughter's laugh or the way his wife hummed while kneading bread. But the mountain preserved everything sound, scent, sorrow. Josiah hung the pelts to dry and went inside to clean his rifle. The Spencer repeating rifle had been Mary's father's, passed down with the expectation it would protect his family. The old man hadn't counted on fever being the enemy. Can't shoot what you can't see, can't fight what don't have form. The rifle was pristine, its action smooth as silk. He'd never let it rust, never let it fail. It was easier to care for than people. It didn't die on you when you'd done everything right. Evening came early in the mountains, shadows pooling in the valleys like dark water. Josiah built up the fire and cooked a simple meal rabbit stew with wild onions and the last of his dried beans. He ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Food was fuel, nothing more. The second chair sat across from him, empty as always, but his eyes never went to it anymore. That was progress of a sort. After supper, he sat on the porch, smoking his pipe and watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. The Milky Way sprawled across the heavens like spilled flour. Mary used to say it was the path souls took to reach heaven. He'd asked her once if she believed that, really believed it. She'd kissed him and said she believed in whatever brought comfort to the living. He wondered if she'd found comfort in those final hours, burning with fever, calling for Emma, who'd already gone ahead. He'd held her hand, promised he'd be along soon, lied like men do when love demands dishonesty. But here he still was, 12 years later, too stubborn or too coward to keep that promise. The night sounds rose around him: owl calls, the rustle of small creatures in the brush, the distant howl of wolves. This was his world now, a world scraped clean of human warmth. He'd chosen it, or it had chosen him. Either way, the fit was perfect as a coffin. Tomorrow he'd check the eastern trap line, maybe hunt the meadow where elk gathered at dawn. Next week he'd need to ride to Creed for winter supplies. The routines would continue, reliable as season following season. He'd grown into his solitude like a tree grows around a fence post, incorporating the damage, surviving despite it. Josiah knocked his pipe empty against the porch rail and stood, joints protesting the movement. Inside, he banked the fire for the night and lay on his narrow bed, still wearing his boots. Sleep would come eventually, and with it, dreams he couldn't control. Sometimes Mary and Emma were alive in those dreams, and he woke to a grief fresh as morning snow. Sometimes they were dead, and he woke to guilty relief that reality matched the nightmare. Through the small window, stars continued their ancient wheel across the sky. Somewhere in those cold distances, perhaps, two souls walked a flower dust path toward whatever came after, and here below, in a cabin built by hands that had once held theirs, a man continued the hard work of living when all reason for it had gone. The mountain didn't care. The mountain had seen men come and go, seen their hopes build and break like spring ice. It would outlast them all. Josiah included. There was comfort in that indifference, in being small enough that his grief couldn't touch the eternal stone. He was learning to be like the mountain, enduring, silent, alone. But mountains, for all their strength, could still be worn down. Wind and water and time could carve valleys where none existed before. And somewhere deep in Josiah's chest, beneath the scar tissue and the studied emptiness, something waited. Not hope he'd buried that with his girls, but perhaps a crack in the stone, a place where something new might, impossibly, take root. For now, though, there was only the night, the empty cabin, and a man who'd forgotten how to be anything but alone. The fire settled in the hearth with a soft crash of coals. Outside, an owl called, and nothing answered. Josiah closed his eyes and waited for morning, when the routine would begin again, when he could lose himself in the simple necessity of survival. The mountain kept its silence, and the man who'd become part of it did the same. The summer heat bore down merciless as a hammer on anvil, even here in the high country. Josiah had been tracking a wounded elk since dawn, following the blood trail through stands of aspen and across granite slopes. The animal was suffering he'd seen where it bedded down twice, each time struggling to rise and continue. A clean kill would be mercy. The trail led him down toward the main road. If you could call the rutted track between Creed and Lake City a road, he rarely came this way. Too much chance of meeting travelers, having to make conversation or at least acknowledge another human presence. But the elk was heading for water, and the creek ran alongside the road for a good mile through the valley. He heard her before he saw her, a string of words that would have made a mule skinner blush, delivered in a voice that managed to be both furious and remarkably musical. Josiah stopped, considering whether to melt back into the trees. The elk would have to wait. But curiosity, that trait he'd thought stone dead, stirred like a hibernating bear. Through the pine branches, he saw her, a woman, maybe 25, maybe 30, hard to tell with the dust and sweat coating her face. She wore a practical traveling dress of brown wool, though the heat had her looking ready to tear it off and burn it. Her dark hair, probably neat that morning, had escaped its pins to hang in damp tendrils around her face. She was crouched by a wagon wheel, examining where the iron rim had split from the wood. No sign of a man, no horse either, the traces hung empty. She was alone, which was either very brave or very foolish on this stretch of road. The wagon tilted at an angle that said the wheel wouldn't last another rotation. She knew it too. Judging by the creative combinations of scripture and profanity she was muttering, Josiah could have walked away, should have, but something in the determined set of her shoulders, the way she refused to let the situation break her, held him. Mary had been like that, stubborn as a high country winter, unwilling to bend even when bending made more sense. He stepped out of the trees, making noise so as not to startle her. Even so, she spun around, and he found himself looking down the barrel of a Remington pocket pistol. Her hand was steady as bedrock. "That's close enough," she said. Her voice had lost the music, gone flat and dangerous as a rattler's warning. Josiah stopped, keeping his hands visible. The Winchester hung easy at his side, no threat intended. "Wagons broke." "I had noticed that. Thank you." The pistol didn't waver. "If you're thinking to rob me, I'll save you the trouble. I have exactly $3.40. You're welcome to it if you'll be on your way." "Don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" He gestured at the wheel. "Could fix that. Temporary, anyway. Enough to get you to town." Her eyes narrowed. Searching his face, they were green, he noticed, like deep forest pools. "And what would that kindness cost me?" "Nothing. Just don't like seeing creatures suffer unnecessarily." Something flickered across her face at the word creatures, but the pistol lowered slightly. "You always compare ladies to animals. Or am I special?" Despite himself, Josiah felt his mouth twitch, almost a smile. "Been a while since I talked to a lady. Might be out of practice." She studied him another long moment, then slowly holstered the pistol. "Well, Mr. McKenna, I'm Grace Caldwell, and I would be grateful for whatever help you can provide. Though I should warn you, I have nothing to pay with but those $3.40. Keep your money." Josiah set down his rifle and moved to examine the wheel. The damage was worse up close. The wood had dried and shrunk in the heat, loosening the iron rim. A proper wheelwright would replace the whole thing. Best he could do was wedge it tight and wrap it with rope or hide. "Your horse?" he asked, not looking at her. Decided he'd had enough 5 miles back, snapped his traces and headed for greener pastures. Can't say I blame him. Josiah grunted, understanding. He pulled his knife and began cutting strips from the deer hide wrapped around his pack. Grace watched, her body still tense as a drawn bow. "You live around here?" she asked. "Up mountain. Trapper. Hunter, trapper in winter. Must be lonely." He didn't answer, focusing on working the hide strips under the iron rim. The sun beat down, and he could smell his own sweat mixing with the pine resin and leather. Then another scent caught him, lavender soap. Somehow, despite the dust and heat, female scent. It had been so long he'd forgotten that particular awareness, the way it could catch a man like a fishhook in the gills. "I can smell your sweat, woman," he said, the words coming unbidden, rough as tree bark. She went very still. "I beg your pardon." He turned to face her, and something in him dead so long he'd forgotten it existed suddenly blazed to life. She was standing close enough to see the gold flecks in those green eyes, the way her lips parted slightly in surprise or offense. "Been 12 years since I smelled a woman up close. Forgot how it... He stopped, unable to finish. Forgot how it made him feel human. Forgot how it made him want things he'd buried. Mr. McKenna. But he was already moving, pulled by something stronger than thought. His hands, rough from years of mountain living, framed her face. She could have pulled the pistol, could have screamed. Instead, she went perfectly still, watching him with those forest eyes. Then he pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. 12 years of emptiness poured into that contact, grief and loneliness and sudden, desperate need. She tasted like dust and determination, like everything he'd lost and stopped hoping to find. For a heartbeat, she was rigid in his arms. Then something shifted. Her hands came up, not to push away but to grip his shirt, and she kissed him back with a ferocity that matched his own. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she stepped back and slapped him hard enough to snap his head sideways. "You don't get to do that," she said, voice shaking. "You don't get to just..." She stopped, pressing a hand to her lips. Josiah touched his cheek, feeling the sting. "I apologize." "Do you..." He considered, "No." That surprised a laugh out of her, short and sharp. "At least you're honest. Most men would lie." "Been too long alone to remember how to lie properly." She studied him again, and he wondered what she saw. A wild man, probably more animal than person, worn down to basic instincts by solitude and loss. He should finish fixing her wheel and disappear back into the mountains where he belonged. Instead, she asked, "What did you mean, 12 years? "My wife, daughter, fever took them." The words came out simple, matter-of-fact, like stating the weather or the price of pelts. But Grace's face softened, and she reached out, not quite touching his arm. "I'm sorry. Long time ago." Time doesn't matter with some wounds. Now he studied her, seeing past the dust and sweat to something else, a guardedness in how she held herself, the way her hand never strayed far from that pistol, running from something or someone. "Let me finish this wheel," he said, turning back to the work. She was quiet while he wrapped the hide strips, pulling them tight and securing them with raw hide laces. It wouldn't last forever, but it might get her to Creed. When he finished, he stood, knees protesting. "Thank you," she said. "I mean it." "Welcome. You got food, water?" "Some, enough to reach town, if the wheel holds." He went to his pack, pulled out strips of smoked venison wrapped in cloth. "Take these." "I can't." "Take them." Their fingers brushed as she accepted the food, and that electric awareness sparked again. She jerked back like she'd touched hot iron. "Why did you kiss me?" she asked suddenly. Josiah looked at her, this woman who'd appeared in his ordered emptiness like a summer storm. "Because I wanted to know if I was still alive. And jury's still out." She smiled then, a real smile that transformed her heat-flushed face. "Well, Mr. McKenna, I suppose I should thank you for fixing my wheel and feeding me. The other, we'll call that temporary insanity brought on by heat stroke." "If you like." She moved to the wagon, then turned back. "I'll be staying in Crete a few days. At the hotel, if it has rooms, in case you decide the jury's verdict and want to apologize properly or improperly, whichever suits." Before he could respond, she climbed onto the wagon seat and took up the reins she'd fashioned from the broken traces. The wheel held as the wagon lurched forward. She didn't look back. Josiah stood in the road, watching until dust and distance swallowed her. The scent of lavender lingered impossibly in the air. His lips still tingled from that kiss, the first in 12 years, the first since Mary. He should feel guilty, should feel like he'd betrayed something sacred. Instead, he felt unsettled, like a house where someone had suddenly thrown open all the windows after years of musty darkness. It wasn't comfortable, but it was undeniably alive. The elk trail had gone cold, but he didn't care. He turned back toward the mountain, toward his cabin and his solitude. But for the first time in 12 years, the emptiness didn't feel like safety. It felt like a choice. 3 days passed before Josiah came down from the mountain again. 3 days of arguing with himself, of starting down the trail only to turn back. On the third night, a summer storm rolled through, lightning splitting the sky and rain hammering his cabin roof. He sat by the fire, but the usual peace wouldn't come. The empty chair across from him seemed to mock his solitude. By morning, he'd made his decision. Or perhaps it had been made that moment on the road when lavender and gunpowder mixed in the air. He cleaned himself up best he could, trimming his beard with the scissors Mary had used for sewing. His reflection in the water bucket showed a stranger, weathered, scarred, but still recognizably human. The ride to Creed took most of the day. The town had grown since his last visit. New buildings crowding the main street, the smell of fresh sawdust competing with horse dung and whiskey. The hotel sat on the corner, 2 stories of raw timber with a sign proclaiming clean beds, hot meals. He found her on the front porch, seated in a rocking chair with a book in her lap. She wore a different dress, blue this time, and her hair was properly pinned. She looked up as his boots hit the stairs, and something flickered across her face, relief, maybe, or satisfaction. "Mr. McKenna, I wondered if you'd turned to stone up there on your mountain." "Considered it." "What changed your mind?" He couldn't answer that, not in words that made sense. "Instead," he said, "thought you might be moving on. My wheel needs proper repair. The wheelwright says 3 more days." She closed the book of Bible. He noticed, worn at the edges. "Have you eaten?" "This morning." "That's not what I asked." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Come on, you're buying me supper. Consider it payment for the temporary insanity." The hotel dining room was nearly empty. Just a traveling salesman in the corner and an old woman knitting by the window. Grace chose a table away from both, and Josiah found himself sitting across from a woman for the first time since he cut off that thought. "Tell me about your mountain," she said after they'd ordered stew and cornbread. "Not much to tell. It's high, cold in winter, and quiet. You make it sound like paradise." "It's what I needed." She studied him over her coffee cup. "And now?" "Now I'm having supper with a woman who shoots first and asks questions later." A necessary skill in my experience. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Though I suppose a man who kisses first and asks permission later wouldn't understand. Fair point. The food arrived, and they ate in companionable silence. Josiah found himself noticing small things, how she buttered her cornbread in precise sections, the way she touched her throat when she swallowed, a thin scar on her left hand, details his mind catalogued without permission. "Where were you headed?" he asked finally. "West, California, maybe somewhere far from—" She stopped, fingers tightening on her spoon. "Somewhere new." "Running." Her green eyes flashed. "Are you asking as a friend or a bounty hunter?" "Don't have friends, don't hunt people." "Then you're a rare man indeed." She pushed her bowl away, appetite apparently gone. "Yes, I'm running. Satisfied. Not judging. Everyone's running from something. Even you. Especially me, just chose to run straight up instead of sideways." That earned him a small smile. "And how's that working?" "Was working fine until 3 days ago." The weight of that statement settled between them. Grace signaled for more coffee, and the silence stretched until she said, "I should tell you to leave me alone. Should tell you I'm trouble you don't need." Should and will are different words. "Yes, they are." She met his eyes. "I have nightmares. Bad ones. I wake up screaming sometimes." "So do I. I have secrets that could get us both killed." "Don't we all?" "I'm serious, Josiah." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and it hit him like a physical touch. "There are people looking for me, dangerous people with money and influence." "Let them come." Mountains seen worse than rich men with grudges. She laughed, but it was bitter. You don't understand. The man of the family I'm running from, they own judges, sheriffs, even a federal marshal. They have reach everywhere. Not on my mountain. Your mountain isn't magic. It's just rock and trees. You'd be surprised what rock and trees can do when they're on your side. She shook her head but didn't argue further. The salesman left, tipping his hat to Grace, who nodded back politely. The old woman's knitting needles clicked in steady rhythm. Come back with me, Josiah said suddenly, the words surprising him as much as her. What? To the cabin, until your wagon's fixed, safer than town. Are you out of your mind? I don't even know you. You know I fix wheels and kiss without asking permission. What else matters? How about whether you're planning to murder me and bury me in those beloved mountains? If I wanted you dead, you'd never have made it to town. She considered this with a logic he appreciated. Fair point, but I can't just people would talk. Let them. Easy for you to say. You don't have to live with reputation. Neither do you. You're running to California, remember? She opened her mouth, closed it, took a long sip of coffee. Why? She asked finally. Why invite trouble into your peaceful solitude? Josiah thought about lying, making up something about Christian charity or mountain hospitality. Instead, he told the truth, because for 12 years I've been dead. Then you pointed a gun at me and something woke up. Don't know what it is. Don't know if I want it. But I'd like to find out before it goes back to sleep. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I talk in my sleep, about things I'd rather keep buried. You might hear things you don't want to know. I told you everyone has secrets. Not like mine. Try me. She looked around the dining room, confirming they were effectively alone. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I killed someone who deserved it, but the law doesn't see it that way. His family wants me hanged or worse. That's who's hunting me, the Caldwell family of Missouri. I took their name when I ran, thought it might throw them off. A harsh laugh. Stupid. They have resources I never imagined. Josiah absorbed this information without flinching. Who was he to you? My husband, Theodore Blackwood, married me when I was 17. Him 35 and already rich as Midas. Everyone said I was lucky. Such a catch, such a provider. Her hands clenched in her lap. They didn't see what happened behind closed doors. Didn't see the bruises under the fine dresses. Didn't hear the things She stopped, breathing hard. You don't need to say more. Yes, I do. If I'm considering your insane invitation, you need to know. He was sick in ways that had nothing to do with the body. Liked to hurt things, animals at first, when he was drunk, then me, then he started looking at the servant girls, young ones, and I knew what would happen. So you stopped him. With his own hunting knife, 3 times in the chest while he slept off a drunk. She met his eyes, defiant. I'd do it again. Josiah reached across the table, covered her clenched hands with one of his. Her skin was soft against his calluses. Good. Good. Man who hurts women and children isn't a man. He's a rabid animal. You put him down. World's better for it. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. His family doesn't see it that way. They've put a bounty on me, $5,000, dead or alive. Preferably alive so they can watch me hang. 5,000, Josiah whistled low. Must have really loved him. They loved his money. He was funding half their political ambitions. Without him. She shrugged. They need someone to blame. The murdered wife makes a better story than the monster husband. How long you been running? 6 months. I've been as far south as Santa Fe, far north as Denver. They always find me. Someone always recognizes me from the wanted posters. She pulled her hands free, wiped her eyes. So now you know. Still want to offer your mountain sanctuary. More than before. Why? Because you're a fighter. Because you did what needed doing. Because... He stopped, unable to voice the real reason. Because you make me remember I'm alive. Grace studied him for a long moment. One condition. Name it. No more kissing without permission. Can I ask permission? You can ask, a ghost of a smile. I make no promises about the answer. They left the dining room together, and if people noticed, Josiah didn't care. Grace collected a small carpet bag from her room while he gathered supplies from the general store: ammunition, coffee, things his cabin hadn't needed in years but might now, like soap that smelled of lavender. As they rode out of town, Grace on his steady mountain horse while he walked alongside, she said, I still might be making a terrible mistake. Might be, but at least you'll be making it somewhere beautiful. She looked up at the mountains rising before them, painted gold and purple in the evening light. Yes, she said softly, there is that. They climbed into the gathering darkness, leaving the town and its dangers behind. Ahead lay the cabin, the solitude, and answers to questions Josiah hadn't known he was asking. The mountain waited, patient as always, ready to shelter two broken souls instead of one. For the first time in 12 years, the trail home didn't feel like retreat. It felt like possibility. 2 weeks had passed since Grace arrived at the mountain cabin. 2 weeks of careful distances and cautious conversations, of learning each other's rhythms like animals sharing territory. She'd taken to mountain life with surprising ease, helping with daily chores without being asked, proving handier with a knife than he'd expected. This morning found them processing a deer Josiah had brought down at dawn. Grace worked beside him, learning to separate hide from meat with smooth, efficient cuts. Her sleeves were rolled up, showing forearms already tanning from mountain sun. She'd stopped flinching when he moved too sudden, stopped reaching for her pistol at every forest sound. You're getting good at that, he said, watching her work. I had a patient teacher. She glanced up, smiled. Even if he does grunt more than talk. They worked in comfortable silence until Grace suddenly stopped, knife suspended over the carcass. Her face had gone pale. What is it? Nothing. She set the knife down, pressed a hand to her forehead. Dizzy spell. It'll pass. But Josiah had noticed other things. How she'd barely touched breakfast. The way she'd excused herself yesterday morning, returning pale and shaky. Now, seeing her fight down obvious nausea, pieces clicked together. Grace. I'm fine. When's the last time you bled? Her head snapped up, green eyes wide. That's not, you can't just ask. When? She turned away, but not before he saw the answer in her face. 2 months, maybe more. Before you ran. Before. Her shoulders shook. Oh God, no! Josiah moved to her, but she held up a hand, keeping him back. Don't, please, I need to. She ran for the tree line, and he could hear her being sick in the bushes. When she returned, she looked like a ghost. He handed her a cup of water, waited while she rinsed her mouth. He asked quietly. Who else's would it be? The bitterness in her voice could have curdled milk. One last gift from my loving husband. She sank onto the porch step, head in her hands. This changes everything. I can't run with a baby, can't hide, can't. A broken laugh. Can't even ride a horse properly soon. Josiah sat beside her, careful not to touch. The morning sun beat down warm, but Grace shivered like winter had come early. Could find a doctor in Denver, he said carefully. Women who know herbs, ways to... No. The word came sharp, definitive. I won't, don't ask me to. Not asking, just saying there's options. Not for me. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I know what you're thinking. Why would I want his child after what he did, what he was... Not thinking anything. Your choice to make. Is it? She laughed again. Harsh. Feels like one more thing he's done to me. One more way to control me, even from the grave. They sat in silence while the sun climbed higher, A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals up the mountain face. Finally, Grace spoke again, quieter now. My grandmother used to say babies were innocents, no matter how they came to be, said they deserved a chance at life, to be better than what made them. She touched her still flat stomach. But how can I look at his child and not see him? How can I love something that came from such hate? Don't know, Josiah said honestly. But seems to me you're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? How can a child that's half you be anything but worth saving? Grace turned to stare at him. You barely know me. Know enough. Know you're strong. Know you fight for what's right. Know you protected those servant girls even though it cost you everything. He finally met her eyes. Any child that's half you has half a chance at being good. That's better odds than most get. Tears spilled down her cheeks. And when his family finds out, they'll never stop hunting me if they know there's an heir. Then they don't find out. How I can't hide a baby, Josiah, can't pretend it doesn't exist. He was quiet for a moment, then said, could pretend it's someone else's. Who would? She stopped, understanding flooding her face. No, absolutely not. I won't put that on you. Not putting anything. I'm offering. You don't know what you're saying. Marriage, even a false one. Who said anything about false? The words hung between them like morning mist. Grace stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the porch and back. You're insane. 2 weeks ago you didn't even know I existed. 2 weeks ago I was dead. Now I'm not. Seems like cause for insanity. I'm carrying another man's child, a murdered man. You're carrying a child who needs a father. I had a daughter once. Could maybe remember how to be one again. Grace stopped pacing, stared at him. Why would you do this? Josiah stood, moved to where she stood rigid as a trapped deer. Because 12 years is long enough to grieve. Because you kiss like you're drowning and I'm air. Because when you're here, this cabin feels like a home instead of a tomb. He reached out, carefully brushed a tear from her cheek. Because maybe we both deserve a second chance at living. I'll bring danger to you. The Blackwoods. Let them come. Man named McKenna married a widow named Caldwell up in the mountains. Trail goes cold there. You make it sound simple. Simple things sometimes are. Question is whether you trust me enough to try. Grace caught his hand, held it against her cheek. I trusted you enough to come here, but this marriage, a baby, a life together that's not trust, that's faith. Then have faith in what in you and God in fairy tale endings for people like us. In tomorrow being better than yesterday. That's all faith is, really. She searched his face, looking for something. Doubt, maybe, or deception. Whatever she sought, she didn't find it. Instead, she said, there's something else, something I haven't told you. More secrets. My name, it's not really Grace. Figured as much. It's Margaret, Margaret Rose Sullivan. Before I married, I picked Grace because... She laughed softly. Because I thought I needed some grace, from God or fate or something. Margaret? He tested the name. Maggie. My father called me Maggie before he died. Then Maggie it is, if you'll have me. She released his hand, wrapped her arms around herself. I need time to think. It's too much, too fast. Take all the time you need, I'll be here. And if I decide to leave to keep running, then I'll make sure you get wherever you're going safe. No obligations, no expectations. You'd do that after offering everything. Your choice to make. Maggie, all I can do is offer. She studied him again. This man who'd lived alone so long he'd forgotten how to lie, how to want anything but survival. Then she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, soft as butterfly wings. Thank you, she whispered, for the offer, for the truth, for not making me feel trapped. You're not trapped, not by me, not ever. She went inside then, leaving him on the porch with the half-butchered deer and the weight of possibilities. Through the window, he could see her at the table, reading that worn Bible. Her lips moved in what might have been prayer. That night, she woke screaming. Josiah found her tangled in the bed he'd given up for her, fighting invisible demons. He lit the lamp, spoke her name until recognition dawned. "Just a dream," he said. "You're safe." He was here. Theodore said the baby would be just like him, said I'd never escape. "So, look at me." He sat on the bed's edge, careful not to crowd her. "He's dead. You made sure of that. He can't hurt you or the child." "But what if it is like him? What if evil runs in blood?" "Then good runs in blood too. Your blood. That's what the child will have most, a mother who fought to survive, who chose right over easy." Grace pulled the blanket up, shivering. "You really believe that?" "I believe choices matter more than blood. Child will have choices, same as anyone. With a liar for a mother and a hermit for a what stepfather pretend father. Real father, if you'll let me. Nothing pretend about it." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Tell me about her. Your daughter." Josiah's throat tightened, but he answered, "Emma, 6 years old when she died. Sweet as spring water, stubborn as her mother, loved birds, all kinds, but especially eagles. Said they were brave, flying so high." He smiled at the memory. "Had her mother's eyes, blue as mountain lakes. You were a good father. Tried to be, failed in the end. Not your fault. Sickness isn't failure." "Felt like it. Still does. Sometimes." Grace reached out, found his hand in the lamplight. "Maybe this is your second chance, too, to be the father you couldn't be then." "Maybe. I haven't said yes." "I know." "But I haven't said no either." "I know that, too." She squeezed his hand. "Stay, just until I fall asleep. Please." So he stayed, sitting on the floor beside the bed, her hand in his. He told her about the mountain, about the eagle that nested on the high crag, about the first snow and how it made the world clean, talked until her breathing deepened and her grip loosened. In the morning, he found her at the table again, but this time she was writing a letter, maybe, or plans. She looked up when he entered. "I've decided," she said. He waited, heart hammering like it hadn't in 12 years. "I'll marry you, Josiah McKenna, but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, we tell no lies between us, ever. I've lived with too many lies already." "Agreed." "Second, you teach me to shoot properly, to hunt, to survive up here. I won't be helpless again. Can start today if you want." "Third," she stood, came to him. "You have to kiss me, now, so I know this is real and not just mountain madness. That all?" "For now." He pulled her close, and this time the kiss was different. Not desperate, but deliberate. Not stealing, but giving. She tasted like coffee and possibility, like hope he'd forgotten existed. When they parted, she said, "One more thing. The child our child never knows. About Theodore. About any of it. As far as the world knows. I'm your wife, and this is your baby." "Our baby," he corrected. "And yes." "Then God help us both. We have a deal." Outside, the morning sun painted the peaks gold. The eagle Josiah had mentioned sailed past the window, riding wind currents toward the sky. And in the small cabin that had held so much grief, 2 broken people began to build something new from the pieces of their past. The crack of gunfire echoed off the mountain walls, followed by the ring of lead on iron. Maggie lowered the Winchester, squinting at the tin can that still sat mockingly upright on the fallen log 50 yards away. "You're jerking the trigger," Josiah said from behind her. "Squeeze it like you're pressing juice from a berry. Gentle but firm." "I am squeezing gently." Frustration colored her words. They'd been at this for an hour, and she'd hit the target exactly twice. "No, You're thinking about squeezing gently, then jerking at the last second. Here! He moved behind her, his chest against her back, his arms coming around to guide hers. Feel the difference. His hands covered hers on the rifle, warm and steady. She could smell wood smoke and leather on him, feel his breath against her ear. Her concentration scattered like startled birds. Breathe, he murmured. In through the nose. Hold it, then squeeze as you let it out slow. She tried to focus on his instructions rather than his proximity. The rifle felt heavy, but his support made it manageable. She breathed in, held, began to exhale. Now! The rifle barked, and the tin can spun off the log with a satisfying clang. I hit it. She turned in his arms, grinning. Did you see I actually... Her words died as she realized how close they were. 3 weeks of marriage, a quiet ceremony and creed with a traveling preacher, and still these moments caught her off guard. The way his gray eyes softened when he looked at her. The careful distance he maintained unless teaching her something. The gentle patience that made her chest ache with emotions she wasn't ready to name. Good shot, he said, stepping back. Try again. On your own this time. She turned back to the target, where he'd already replaced the can. This time, she forced herself to remember, breathe, hold, gentle squeeze. The can jumped and fell. Better, again. They worked until her shoulders ached and her ears rang despite the cotton wadding. 5 cans out of 10 wasn't terrible for a month's practice. When Theodore had tried to teach her to shoot his fancy European pistols, she deliberately failed, not wanting to give him any reason to see her as more threat than victim. Now, with Josiah, she wanted to succeed, needed to... That's enough for today, he said, taking the rifle. Your arms will be sore tomorrow as it is. I can keep going. I know you can, but pushing too hard makes you sloppy. Sloppy gets you killed. They walked back toward the cabin, Maggie rubbing her shoulder. The baby wasn't showing yet, not at 3 months, but she felt the changes. The constant fatigue, the way certain smells turned her stomach, the tenderness in her breasts. Josiah noticed too, though he was careful not to mention it directly. Just quietly took over the heavier chores, made sure she ate even when nausea struck. Tomorrow we'll work with the knife, he said as they walked. Close quarters fighting is different than shooting. Have you had to fight close quarters? Few times. Rather shoot from a distance if I can. Safer. But sometimes safe isn't an option. When? He was quiet long enough she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, man came up here about 7 years back. Claimed he was hunting elk, but he was watching the cabin. Waiting. Saw him creeping close one night, knife out. What did you do? What I had to... His voice was flat. Turned out he was wanted for killing a family down in Pueblo. Thought maybe I had gold hidden up here. Was it hard killing him? No. He glanced at her. That bother you, that it was easy? Should it? Don't know. Mary would have said any death should be hard. That keeping our humanity means feeling the weight of it. What do you say? I say some people give up their right to that weight. Man who'd kill for gold. Man who hurts women and children, they're not men anymore. They're problems that need solving. Maggie thought of Theodore's face that last night, peaceful in drunken sleep while she stood over him with the knife. The way the blade had slid in easier than she'd expected. The wetness on her hands. Warm and accusing. I didn't feel bad, she said quietly. When I did it, felt scared. Felt sick after, but not guilty. Not sorry. Good. The preacher would say that makes me damned. The preacher never met your husband. Josiah stopped walking, turned to face her. You saved those servant girls, saved yourself, saved this baby from growing up with a monster for a father. Nothing damned about that. Sometimes I dream about it, the blood, his eyes opening at the end. Seeing me. Dreams fade, takes time. But they do. Do yours about your family? Different dreams. But yes, some nights are easier now. Since when? He looked at her for a long moment. Since you started sleeping in the next room. House doesn't echo the same with 2 heartbeats in it. 3 heartbeats, Maggie thought but didn't say. They continued to the cabin, where she noticed something different immediately. You fixed the door. Hung straight now, was bothering me. It had been hanging crooked since before she arrived. According to him, been meaning to fix it for 3 winters. He'd said, now it sat properly in its frame, new hinges gleaming. Inside, other changes showed. A second chair at the table, rough-hewn but sturdy. New shelves on the wall. A cradle, half-finished, in the corner where his hunting gear used to sit. You've been busy, she said, running her hand over the smooth wood of the cradle. Winter's coming. Need to be ready. Josiah, she turned to him. This isn't what you agreed to. Playing house, making furniture. You offered protection. Not what not caring. He moved to the stove, busied himself with coffee. Can't help what I make. Hands need work. Your hands need work, so you build a cradle. You rather I stop. She thought about it, about what the cradle meant. Hope, future, commitment to more than just survival. No, she said softly, don't stop. They ate dinner venison stew with wild onions and the last of the summer greens. Josiah had traded pelts for vegetables from a homesteader down mountain, expanding their diet for her sake. Another small change, another sign of accommodation. I've been thinking, Maggie said as they cleaned dishes, about after when the baby comes. What about it? We'll need supplies, medicine, things I don't know how to make or find up here. There's a woman in Creed, midwife. She'd come if asked. You trust her. Delivered half the babies in the county, keeps her mouth shut about who and when. And if something goes wrong, Josiah's hand stilled on the dish he was drying. Nothing will go wrong. You can't promise that. Watch me. Josiah. He turned to her, and she saw it, then the fear he kept locked away. The memory of loss that drove every protective instinct, every careful plan. Nothing will go wrong, he repeated. I won't let it. She wanted to argue, to point out that will alone couldn't stop fever or complications, but she recognized the look in his eyes. She'd seen it in the mirror when she'd stood over Theodore with the knife. The look of someone who'd already lost too much to lose more. Instead, she said, teach me what you know about birthing. Your wife must have known things, remedies, preparations. Some herbs for pain, positions to ease the baby down. He stopped, swallowed. She was teaching Emma to help, said every woman should know how to catch a baby, never know when the knowledge might save a life. Then teach me what she taught, what you remember. He nodded slowly. There's books, too, in town. Could trade for them. Books would be good, but your memory is better. Things that worked here in these mountains. That night, he showed her Mary's medicine box, stored in the root cellar all these years. Dried herbs labeled in careful script, tinctures in brown bottles, notes on usage and dosage. Willow bark for fever, he said, holding up each item. Raspberry leaf for strengthening, blue cohosh to bring labor, calendula for healing after. She knew all this. Her mother taught her, and her mother's mother. Mountain women pass it down. He paused. Should be passed to you now. But I didn't grow up here. I'm not mountain women. You are now. He handed her the box. You're my wife. This is yours. The weight of it, not just the box, but the tradition, the trust made her throat tight. I don't know if I can learn all this. You learn to shoot. You'll learn this too. Shooting is different. Point and squeeze. This is life and death. So is shooting, done right, and you're doing it right. She clutched the box, feeling the smooth wood worn by generations of hands. What if I'm not strong enough when the time comes? You killed a man with his own knife to save innocence. You ran 6 months alone, stayed free. You came up a mountain with a stranger because your gut said to trust. He touched her cheek, gentle as falling snow. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, including Mary, and she was forged from iron. I don't feel strong. I feel scared all the time. Strong isn't not feeling scared. Strong is feeling scared and doing what needs doing anyway. She leaned into his touch, just for a moment. They'd shared a bed since the wedding for warmth, for appearance if anyone came by, but nothing more. He'd offered her what she needed: protection, a name, a father for her child. She'd been too grateful to ask for more, too wounded to offer it. But sometimes, like now, she wondered what it would be like to bridge that careful distance, to kiss him without the excuse of sealing a bargain or proving a point, to let him hold her through the nightmares instead of talking her down from across the room. I should tend the horses, he said, dropping his hand. They're already tended. You did it before supper. Then I should stay. The word came out stronger than she'd intended. Just stay. Talk to me. Tell me about the mountains in winter. Tell me what to expect. So they sat by the fire, and he told her about snow 20 feet deep, about ice that sang in the wind, about the profound silence of a world wrapped in white. He told her practical things too: how to keep water from freezing, how to portion food for 5 months of isolation, how to read weather signs that meant the difference between safe travel and death. We'll be alone up here once snow flies, he said. No going to town, no visitors, just us and the mountain. And the baby, come spring. And the baby, he smiled slightly. Born with a thaw. Good timing. Josiah. She waited until he looked at her. What if they find me, the Blackwoods? What if they track us here? Then they'll learn what the mountain does to unwelcome guests. I'm serious. So am I. He leaned forward, firelight dancing on his weathered face. This mountain has kept me safe for 12 years. Hidden me when I needed hiding. Fed me when I needed feeding. It'll do the same for you. For our family. Our family. The words sent warmth through her chest. Not his charity case, not his burden. Family. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me as more than my mistakes, more than my past. We all got past, Maggie. What matters is what we build from here. She stood, moved to where he sat, bent and kissed his forehead. Then let's build something worth having. Tomorrow she'd learn knife work. Next week, herb lore. Winter would come with its challenges, the baby with its dangers. The Blackwoods might find her trail, might bring their money and influence to bear. But tonight, in a cabin made home by careful hands and patient hearts, she felt something she hadn't in years. Not just safe, though she was that. Not just cared for, though that too. She felt possible, like maybe 2 broken people could make something whole. Like maybe the mountain that had sheltered one grieving soul could stretch to cover 3, no, 4, counting the life growing inside her. Outside, wind sang through the pines. Inside, the fire crackled, and 2 people sat in comfortable silence, learning the shape of a future neither had expected but both were beginning to want. The rider appeared at dawn like a ghost from the mist, moving up the mountain trail with the easy grace of someone who belonged to these heights. Josiah saw him first, recognizing the paint horse and the straight-backed posture long before the man's features became clear. Samuel's coming, he told Maggie, who was tending the fire. She tensed immediately, hand moving to the pistol she now wore constantly. Who's Samuel? Friend. Cherokee. Known him 15 years. He touched her shoulder gently. It's all right. He's the only man I trust up here. Samuel Crowfeather dismounted in the yard, his dark eyes taking in the changes, the straightened door, the new woodpile, the woman standing beside Josiah with wary alertness. He was perhaps 50, his black hair streaked with silver, wearing a mix of traditional dress and frontier practical. Brother, he said to Josiah in greeting, then nodded to Maggie. Ma'am. Samuel. Josiah clasped his friend's arm. Coffee. If you're offering. They sat on the porch, the morning sun painting the peaks gold. Samuel's presence was calm as deep water, but Maggie noticed how his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging everything. Heard you took a wife, Samuel said finally. Didn't believe it till now. News travels. Especially interesting news. He studied Maggie openly. You're the widow from Missouri, the one asking questions in Crete about wheelwrights. Maggie's hand tightened on her cup. What else did you hear? Enough to know you chose a hard road? His voice was neutral. No judgment either way. Also enough to know why Josiah here would break 12 years of hiding to help. I'm not hiding, Josiah said. Samuel's mouth quirked. No, then why haven't you been to town in 2 months? Why send me to trade your pelts instead of going yourself? Been busy. Busy married. Busy building furniture. Busy being alive again. Is there a point to this visit, Samuel? The Cherokee's expression sobered. There is. 3 days ago. Men came to Creed, professional types, clean clothes, good horses asking careful questions. Maggie's coffee cup rattled as she set it down. How many? 4, led by a man calling himself Harlan Pike. Has federal papers, or something that looks like it. Federal marshal? Maybe just bought papers. Either way, he's got the sheriff's cooperation. They're searching systematic-like. Every homestead, every mining camp. They ask about her specifically. Josiah's voice had gone flat. Dangerous. Not by name. Looking for a woman traveling alone. Maybe hurt, maybe desperate. Said she's wanted for questioning about a death in Missouri. Made it sound like they want to help her. Maggie laughed bitterly. Help me to a noose. That was my thought. Samuel pulled a folded paper from his coat. This was posted yesterday. Josiah unfolded it, Maggie reading over his shoulder. Her own face stared back, younger and softer, from a wedding portrait. The name read Margaret Blackwood, wanted for questioning in the death of Theodore Blackwood. Reward $5,000. Questioning, she spat, as if there's any question what they do. Notice it doesn't say murder, Samuel observed. Or wanted by law. Just questioning. Careful words for careful men. Private bounty hunters. Josiah said, working the edges of legal. That's my read. Question is, what do you plan to do about it? Nothing, Josiah said. Let them search. They won't find her. Won't they? Samuel leaned back. You sure about that? You know these mountains. Brother, but you're not invisible. Someone sees smoke from your chimney. Wonders why the hermit's burning more wood than usual. Someone else notes you buying women's supplies in town. I haven't. No, but I have on your behalf, and I'm not the only one who's noticed. He held up a hand before Josiah could speak. I've been careful, but careful only goes so far when money's involved. How long? Maggie asked quietly. How long before they work their way up here? Week, maybe 2. Depends how thorough they are, how desperate. Samuel's eyes were kind but honest. These men, they're not the usual rabble. Pike especially, he has the look of someone who finishes what he starts. Then we run. Maggie said, Tonight, head for California like I planned. No! Josiah's voice cut through her panic. Running makes you pray. We stay. We prepare. Prepare for what? A siege. They have federal papers. Fake federal papers. And 4 men who think a pregnant woman and a hermit will be easy pickings. He looked at Samuel. Will you stand with us? You need to ask. I need to offer. This isn't your fight. Samuel smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. Brother, I've been waiting 12 years for you to find something worth fighting for besides survival. You think I'd miss this? I can't ask you to, Maggie started. You're not asking, I'm offering. Samuel's voice was gentle. Besides, I have my own reasons for disliking men who hunt women. My sister, she had similar troubles once. didn't end well. They spent the morning planning. Samuel knew the mountain almost as well as Josiah, knew the approach routes and defensive positions. They had advantages: terrain, preparation, the fact that Pike's men expected to find a lone woman, not 3 fighters. The trail splits below Eagle Rock. Josiah sketched in the dirt. One path leads to the cabin direct, other circles through Dead Man's Draw. Narrow passage. Samuel noted, good for ambush. My thought, too. We let them choose their approach. Then, no, Maggie interrupted. We're not killing federal marshals. Fake papers or not. That would bring real law, real trouble. Then what do you suggest? Josiah asked. We prove they're not what they claim. Get evidence of who hired them, why they're really here. She touched her belly unconsciously. If we can show they're just bounty hunters working for the Blackwoods, the sheriff might actually do his job. Samuel finished. It's a thought. Pike's staying at the hotel. Might have papers in his room. Too risky, Josiah said immediately. For you, maybe. But I'm just another Indian in town for supplies. Invisible if I want to be. They argued it out, but eventually Josiah conceded. Samuel would go back to town, scout the situation, try to learn more about Pike and his men. Meanwhile, Josiah and Maggie would prepare the homestead, create defensive positions, cache supplies, plan escape routes if needed. After Samuel left, Maggie found Josiah standing at the edge of the cliff, staring down at the valley below. You're angry, she said. I'm thinking. You're thinking angry thoughts. I can see it in your shoulders. He turned to her. I don't like sending Samuel to do what I should be doing. You can't go to town. They might recognize you from the wedding. I know why I can't go. Doesn't mean I like it. He scrubbed a hand through his hair. 12 years I've kept trouble away from here. Now I've brought it to your door. I know. I'm sorry. Don't. He caught her arm as she turned away. Don't apologize for existing, for needing help. That's not what I meant. Then what? I meant 12 years I've been hiding up here, telling myself it was living. Then you came along and showed me different. Now trouble's coming, and part of me. He stopped, struggled for words. Part of me is glad, because it means I have something worth protecting again. A baby that isn't yours and a woman who isn't really your wife. My name on the marriage paper says different. My hands building that cradle say different. He pulled her closer. My heart says different. Josiah, you don't have to say anything, don't have to feel the same. Just need you to know where I stand. She searched his face, this man who'd offered everything and asked for nothing. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. Soft and sure. I know where you stand, she whispered. Question is, do you know where I do? Tell me. Right here, right beside you. Not because I need protection or a name for the baby. Because, she took a breath, because you see me. Not the widow, not the killer, not the scandal, just me. Maggie. And because when you touch me, I don't feel afraid. For the first time in years, I feel, she laughed shakily, I feel possible. He kissed her then, deep and careful, like a man handling something precious. When they parted, both breathing hard, he said, we should prepare, if Pike's coming. Let him come, she said fiercely. I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder. If they want Margaret Blackwood, they can find Maggie McKenna instead. See how they like the difference. They worked through the afternoon, Josiah showing her hidden paths, teaching her to read the mountain's moods, where to cache ammunition, how to move silent through the trees, which rocks would provide cover, which would trap you. If shooting starts, you take the Winchester and get to the high cave, he instructed. Can hold that position for days if needed. What about you? I'll be making sure they don't get close enough to matter. And if they do, he showed her the knife at his belt, the backup pistol in his boot. Then we remind them that mountain folk don't die easy. That night, as they lay in bed still carefully apart but closer than before, Maggie asked, "Do you think Samuel's right about Pike finishing what he starts?" "Maybe, but Samuel forgot something." "What's that?" "So do I." She found his hand in the darkness, threaded their fingers together. "What if they have proof about Theodore? What if they can make the charges real? Then we deal with that when it comes. Right now, all they have is money and determination. We have more." "Like what?" "Like home ground advantage, like righteousness on our side, like," he squeezed her hand, "like something worth fighting for." "A family," she said softly. "A family." Outside, wind rattled the windows, the first hint of autumn's approach. Soon snow would lock them in, make the mountain impassable. If they could hold out until then. "Josiah." "Thank you for standing with me, for not making me face this alone. You're not alone anymore. Not ever again, if I have say in it." She moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder. He stiffened for a moment, surprised, then relaxed, his arm coming around her. "Tell me about Samuel's sister," she said, "the one who had troubles. Bright feather, beautiful girl, proud, married a white trader who promised her the world. Turned out he already had a wife back east. When she confronted him," he paused, "he sold her to men who traffic in such things." "God, what happened to her?" "Samuel found her, brought her home, but she was broken by then, in ways that don't heal. Died the next winter, just stopped eating, stopped trying. And the trader disappeared one night, never seen again. Samuel doesn't speak of it." Maggie absorbed this, understanding more about the quiet Cherokee's willingness to help. "We all have our ghosts." "Yes, but sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to lay them to rest." "Is that what we're doing, laying ghosts?" "Maybe. Or maybe we're just learning to live with them better." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other and plans for defense. In the morning, Samuel would return with intelligence. Pike would continue his hunt. The mountain would wait, patient as stone, ready to protect or punish as needed. But for tonight, in a cabin built by grieving hands and warmed by new love, two people held each other against the coming storm. Whatever Pike brought, whatever the Blackwoods demanded, they would face it together. The mountain had sheltered one broken soul for 12 years. Now it would prove whether it could shelter a family born of violence and chance, but bound by choice and growing trust. Time would tell if that was enough. Time. And the test that morning would surely bring. The attack came at dawn, 3 days after Samuel's warning. Maggie woke to Josiah's hand over her mouth, his whisper barely audible. "They're here, 4 horses at the tree line. Get dressed, take the Winchester." She rolled out of bed, pulled on the men's clothes Josiah had gotten her easier to move in, harder to grab. Her hands were steady as she checked the rifle, counted ammunition. The baby seemed to sense the tension, turning restlessly in her belly. "Samuel," she breathed. "On the ridge. Saw his signal mirror 5 minutes ago." Josiah strapped on his gun belt. Movements economical. They're being cautious, watching the cabin. Pike. Has to be. They'd prepared for this. Cached weapons and supplies. Planned fields of fire. But knowing trouble was coming was different from having it at your door with the morning mist. A voice rang out from the trees. "Josiah McKenna, this is Deputy Federal Marshal Harlan Pike. I have warrants and questions regarding a woman who may be in your custody. Come out peaceable, and we can settle this civilized." Josiah moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. "Deputy Marshal Pike," he called back. "Happy to talk, but you'll understand if I ask to see those warrants first. Man can't be too careful these days." "Fair enough. I'm coming out. No weapons drawn." Pike emerged from the trees, tall, lean, wearing a long duster over good clothes. He had the look of a man who'd worn a badge once. Maybe, before finding private work paid better. He stopped 20 yards from the porch, hands visible but ready. Mr. McKenna, I believe you married a woman named Grace Caldwell some weeks back. I did. I need to speak with her. There are questions about her late husband's death. Family concerns that need addressing. My wife's not feeling well. Morning sickness? Perhaps you could leave these questions, and we'll respond in writing. Pike's smile was humorless. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The family has authorized me to ensure Mrs. Blackwood's safety. They're concerned she may be under duress. The name's McKenna now, and she's under no duress except what you're causing. Then surely she won't mind telling me so herself. Maggie stepped onto the porch before Josiah could stop her. Winchester held casual but ready. I mind, Mr. Pike, I mind being hunted like an animal. I mind hired guns pretending to be federal law. Most of all, I mind the Blackwood family's continued harassment. Pike's eyes sharpened. Mrs. Blackwood, you're looking well. Mrs. McKenna, and yes, Mountain Air agrees with me. The family just wants to talk, clear up some confusion about Theodore's death. No confusion. He died. I left. End of story. They have questions about the circumstances. Then they can ask the Denver sheriff who investigated, or check the death certificate. Heart failure. It says, too much drink and rich food. Funny thing about death certificates. They say what the person filling them out wants them to say. Pike shifted slightly, and Maggie caught movement in the trees as men positioning themselves. Even funnier thing about federal warrants. Josiah said, they have signatures, seals. Mind if we see yours up close? Of course. Pike reached into his duster, slow and careful. Though I should mention my men are somewhat nervous. This is rough country, and they'd hate for any misunderstandings to occur. No misunderstandings here. Samuel's voice came from above and behind Pike. The marshal's head snapped around to find the Cherokee standing on a boulder, bow drawn. Your men move wrong. This arrow finds your spine. Federal warrant won't stop that. Pike went very still. Who are you? Friend of the family. The real family, not whatever bought your papers. Now, Josiah said conversationally, about that warrant. Toss it over here, gentle-like. Pike complied, throwing a leather folder that landed in the dirt. Maggie retrieved it while Josiah kept his gun trained on the marshal. Interesting, she said, scanning the papers. This warrant is for Margaret Sullivan. I haven't been Margaret Sullivan in 8 years. Blackwood, Sullivan, McKenna. You're the woman in that portrait. Pike said, Am I women change? Names change. 8 years is a long time. Not so long that Pike stopped as one of his men broke cover. Impatient or nervous. Everything happened fast. The man raised a rifle. Samuel's bow twanged. Josiah shoved Maggie behind him as gunfire erupted. The arrow took Pike's man in the shoulder, spinning him around. Josiah's shot caught another in the leg. Return fire splintered wood from the cabin wall. Maggie dropped to one knee, sighting down the Winchester, and put a round into a tree trunk inches from a third man's head. Enough, Pike shouted, hands raised. Stand down, everyone, stand down. The gunfire ceased, leaving echoes bouncing off mountain walls. 2 of Pike's men were down, wounded but alive. The third had his hands up, looking between Pike and the guns trained on him. Seems your federal authority doesn't count for much up here, Josiah observed. You shot federal officers? We shot hired guns who opened fire on a pregnant woman, Samuel corrected. Another arrow already knocked. Big difference in how that story plays. Besides, Maggie added, standing slowly, real federal marshals would have announced themselves properly, would have gone through the local sheriff, wouldn't have surrounded a cabin like bandits planning a raid. Pike's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. The Blackwoods have resources. The Blackwoods have money. Maggie cut him off. Money they made off my husband's schemes. Money they're protecting by hunting me. But money doesn't buy everything. Mr. Pike, what do you want? The truth, in writing. Who hired you? What they really want? Why they're so desperate to find me? I can't. Josiah cocked his rifle. Sure you can. Man with a good memory like yours probably knows all sorts of interesting details. They'll kill me. Maybe, but we'll kill you certain if you don't start writing. Samuel's voice was mild as morning coffee. Mountain's got plenty of places to hide a body. Or 4. Pike looked at his wounded men, calculated odds. I need paper, pen. Maggie, fetch the man his tools. She brought writing materials from inside, set them on the porch rail. Pike wrote for 10 minutes, filling 2 pages with tight script. When he finished, she read it aloud. I, Harlan Pike, formerly of the Kansas City Police, currently employed by Blackwood Industries through their attorney, 1 Mr. James Morrison, do swear the following is true. I was hired to locate Margaret Blackwood, née Sullivan, and return her to Missouri by any means necessary. The family believes she possesses documents belonging to Theodore Blackwood that could damage their business interests. They also fear she might be carrying Theodore's heir, which would complicate inheritance. My orders were to secure both the woman and any documents, with secondary priority on confirming or eliminating any pregnancy. She stopped reading, face pale. Eliminate. Not kill, Pike said quickly. Just ensure no baby was born to complicate things. Same difference to the baby, Josiah said flatly. There's more, Maggie continued. Details about bribes paid, officials bought, plans to have me declared insane if captured alive. She folded the papers. This is enough to hang you, Mr. Pike. Conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, interstate fraud. Which is why you're going to disappear, Samuel suggested. You and your men going to ride out of Colorado and keep riding, maybe California, maybe Mexico, somewhere the Blackwoods can't find you to silence you. They'll hunt us. Like they're hunting her, Josiah asked. Then you better run fast and far. We need a doctor, Pike said, gesturing at his wounded men. There's one in Creed. Tell him you ran into bandits. Tell him anything but the truth. Samuel lowered his bow slightly. We'll be sending copies of that confession to newspapers in Denver, Kansas City, and St. Louis, also to the real federal marshals. Insurance. You understand. If the Blackwoods come after us, then you should have thought of that before taking their money, Maggie said. Get your men on horses and go, now, before my husband decides widowing me might be simpler. They watched Pike and his men struggle onto their horses, the wounded tied to saddles. As they prepared to leave, Pike turned back. You know this doesn't end here. They'll send others. Let them. Josiah said, the mountain's hungry. Been a while since it fed proper. Pike shuddered at something in Josiah's voice, then spurred his horse down the trail. They watched until the riders disappeared into the trees, then longer, ensuring it wasn't a trick. Well, Samuel said finally, climbing down from his perch. That was exciting. You're bleeding, Maggie noticed. Scratch, rock splinter from return fire. He examined the minor wound on his arm. Worth it to see you shoot. Where'd you learn to place warning shots so precise? Josiah's been teaching me. Though I wasn't warning, I missed. She's being modest, Josiah said. Could have killed him if she wanted. Didn't want to, not with the baby. She stopped, hand going to her belly. Too much excitement. I need to sit. Josiah was beside her instantly, guiding her to the porch bench. You hurt the baby. No, just shaky. Now that it's over. Not over, Samuel said quietly. Pike was right. They'll send others. Maybe, but we'll have his confession published by then. Harder to hire killers when everyone knows you're doing it. The Blackwoods won't care about public opinion if they're desperate enough, Maggie said. And they are. The documents Pike mentioned Theodore kept records. Bribes, illegal deals, even murder. I took them when I ran. Insurance of my own." "Where are they?" Samuel asked. "Safe. Hidden. But if the Blackwoods know I have them, then they'll never stop coming," Josiah finished. "Unless—" "Unless what?" "Unless they think you're dead." The idea hung in the air like smoke. Samuel nodded slowly. "Could work. Stage something convincing." "No," Maggie said firmly. "I won't let them win by disappearing. Won't let them drive me into hiding deeper than I already am." "Not hiding," Josiah said. "Strategic retreat. Let them think they've won while we prepare something better." "Like what?" "Like using those documents. Not for insurance, but for justice. Real justice. Not whatever law they've bought." They talked through the afternoon, planning. Samuel would take Pike's confession to Denver, ensure it reached honest hands. Maggie would prepare packages of Theodore's documents, ready to send to newspapers and federal authorities, and they would craft a story of Margaret Blackwood's death. Tragic accident in the mountains, body unrecoverable. "But first," Samuel said as evening approached, "we celebrate." "Celebrate?" Maggie asked. "You faced down 4 hired guns, sent them running, proved you belong on this mountain." He smiled. "That's worth celebrating." They built a fire outside, cooked venison and beans, shared a bottle of whiskey Samuel had been saving. As night fell and stars emerged, Maggie found herself leaning against Josiah, his arm around her, feeling something she hadn't expected. Safe. Not just protected, but genuinely safe. Like the mountain itself had accepted her, wrapped her in stone and shadow and strength. "Thank you," she told Samuel, "for standing with us, for the warning." "Family stands together," he said simply. "You're family now. Even carrying another man's child, even with all the trouble I bring. Especially then." He raised his cup. "To new beginnings. To justice delayed but not denied. To babies born free of their father's sins." They drank, and the whiskey burned warm down Maggie's throat. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Blackwoods wouldn't give up easily. Winter was coming, and with it isolation that could be protection or prison. But tonight, she sat between 2 men who'd fought for her, who'd risked everything for a woman they barely knew, and a child that wasn't theirs. Tonight, she was Maggie McKenna, wife and soon-to-be mother, mountain woman and fighter. The ghost of Margaret Blackwood could rest. She'd been buried in gunfire and courage, in loyalty freely given and fiercely defended. What emerged was someone new-scarred but not broken, hunted but not caught. Free, finally. Truly free. Spring came late to the mountain, but when it arrived, it brought more than melting snow. It brought new life in the form of a squalling, red-faced infant who entered the world just as dawn broke over the peaks. "It's a girl," the midwife announced, placing the baby in Maggie's exhausted arms. "Healthy as a mountain cat and twice as loud." Josiah stood frozen beside the bed, staring at the tiny creature who'd just spent the last 10 hours making her mother scream and curse in ways that would have made a mule skinner blush. The baby's hair was dark like Maggie's, her features still too new to show much else. "Say hello to your daughter," Maggie whispered, smiling through her exhaustion. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Our daughter." "Want to hold her?" He looked terrified at the prospect, but Maggie was already shifting the bundle toward him. His large hands, so sure with rifle and knife, trembled as they accepted the infant. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I'm your PA. He stopped, overwhelmed by the weight of it. Not just the physical weight of 6 pounds of new life, but the memory of another weight. Another daughter, lost to fever 12 years past. The baby opened her eyes, blue as mountain lakes, like Emma's had been, and stared up at him with that unfocused intensity of newborns. His knees nearly buckled. "Josiah," Maggie reached for his hand. "What is it?" "Her eyes. There she's—" He couldn't finish. Couldn't explain how the past and present had suddenly collided in this tiny face. "Perfect," Maggie supplied. "She's perfect." "Yes," he managed. "Perfect." They'd weathered the winter well, despite everything. Pike's confession had indeed made the papers, causing enough scandal that the Blackwoods had bigger problems than one runaway widow. Federal investigators had descended on their operations, frozen assets, arrested key figures including the corrupt marshal. Theodore's documents, sent anonymously to prosecutors, had sealed their fate. The empire built on blood and bribes was crumbling, and nobody had time to hunt for Margaret Blackwood anymore, especially since word had filtered back about her tragic death in an avalanche. Body never recovered. "What shall we name her?" Maggie asked, taking the baby back. They'd discussed this through the long winter nights, but now, faced with the reality of their daughter, all those names seemed inadequate. "Emma," Josiah said suddenly. "Emma Rose McKenna." Maggie looked up, understanding the significance. "Are you sure?" "It's a good name, strong name, deserves to be carried forward." "Emma Rose." Maggie tested it, looking down at their daughter. "Little Emma, yes, it suits her." The midwife, Mrs. Patterson, bustled about cleaning up, pretending not to notice the emotion in the room. She'd been told the baby came early, that Maggie had only been married 7 months. If she suspected different, she kept it to herself. Mountain folk knew how to mind their business. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on you both," she said, packing her bag. "Make sure she feeds regular. And you." She pointed at Josiah. "You make sure your wife rests. Birth takes it out of a woman." "Yes, ma'am." After she left, taking her fee in pelts and preserved meat, the little family was alone. Emma had fallen asleep, making tiny sounds that had both parents mesmerized. "I need to tell you something," Maggie said quietly. "About Theodore. About what really happened that night. You don't need to—" "Yes, I do. You've taken his child as your own. You deserve the whole truth." Josiah settled in the chair beside the bed. "Then tell me." "He came home drunk, as usual, but this time he had one of the servant girls with him, Catherine, only 15. He'd cornered her in the carriage house, was dragging her to his study." Maggie's voice was steady, but her arms tightened around Emma. "I heard her crying, begging, knew what would happen if I didn't act." "So you acted." "I took the knife from his desk, the one he used for letters, for intimidation. When he passed out after he finished his business with whiskey, I stood over him, watched him sleep. This man who'd hurt me for years, who was about to destroy an innocent girl." She looked up at Josiah. "I felt nothing when I did it, no rage, no fear, just purpose." "Good. But here's what I didn't tell anyone. He woke up, right at the end, looked at me, knew what was happening, and you know what he said." "What?" "You don't have the courage, even dying. He thought I was weak, too beaten down to finish it." A fierce smile crossed her face. "He was wrong." "Yes, he was. I'm not sorry, not for killing him, not for running, not for any of it. My only regret is Catherine. I hope she got away clean, found somewhere safe. Samuel heard she went to live with relatives in Chicago. The Blackwood scandal gave her a chance to disappear." "Good." Maggie looked down at Emma. "I'll tell her someday, when she's old enough, that her blood father was a monster. But her real father is a good man, the best man." "Maggie." "No, let me finish. You gave us everything your name, your home, your protection. You stood against armed men for us. You loved her before she was born. Loved me when I was nothing but trouble walking. How do I ever repay that?" "You don't repay love," Josiah said simply. "You return it." "Then consider it returned, 10-fold, 100-fold." She caught his hand. "I love you, Josiah McKenna, not for what you've done, but for who you are. The man who kissed a stranger because he needed to feel alive. The man who builds cradles and teaches shooting and holds me through nightmares. The man who'll raise another man's child as his own without a moment's hesitation. Our child, he corrected firmly. Blood doesn't make a father. Choice does. I choose her. I choose you. Every day from now until my last. Emma stirred, making a sound that might have been contentment or gas. Her parents smiled down at her, then at each other. We should write to Samuel, Maggie said. Tell him his niece has arrived. He knows. Saw his signal fire this morning up on Eagle Rock. He'll come when the pass is clear. Bring gifts and stories. Stories of her brave Uncle Samuel who helped save her family. Among others. Josiah touched Emma's tiny fist, watched it curl around his finger. She'll have all the stories. Yours, mine, the mountains. She'll know where she comes from. All of it, the dark and the light. And what she becomes. Whatever she wants. Doctor, teacher, hunter, mother. World's changing. Maybe by the time she's grown, it'll have changed enough for a woman to be anything. Listen to you, progressive thinker. Mountain does that. Shows you how small human rules are compared to natural law. Up here, survival doesn't care if you're man or woman. Only cares if you're strong and smart and willing to fight. Like her mother. And her father. They spent the day in quiet celebration. Josiah cooked a feast with their remaining winter stores plus fresh game. Maggie managed to eat between Emma's frequent nursing. The cabin, which had housed grief for so long, now rang with the sounds of new life, baby cries, soft lullabies, quiet laughter. As evening fell, Josiah stood on the porch, looking out over the valley. The peaks still wore caps of snow, but below, green was returning to the world. Deer had come back to their summer grazing, and he'd seen bear sign near the berry patches. The mountain was waking up, stretching after its long sleep. Maggie joined him. Emma wrapped in the blanket he'd bought in town, soft yellow wool. Nothing practical about it except the way it made his girls look like captured sunshine. Regrets? She asked. About what? Taking on a ready-made family, giving up your solitude, getting shot at by fake federal marshals. That last one was exciting. Been too long since someone tried to kill me proper. Be serious. He turned to her, saw the vulnerability beneath the joke. No regrets, not one. 12 years I spent up here dead inside, going through motions, existing instead of living. Then you pointed a gun at me and everything changed. I seem to recall you kissing me without permission. Best decision I ever made, even if it earned me a slap. You deserved that slap. Probably, but it woke us both up, didn't it? She leaned into him, careful of Emma. Yes, it did. They watched the sun sink toward the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere in Missouri. The Blackwood Empire was ashes. Somewhere in California or Mexico. Harlan Pike was learning to live looking over his shoulder. But here on the mountain, a new family was writing their own story. What do you think she'll be like? Maggie asked. Emma, when she grows up, strong like her mother, stubborn like her father. Which father? Does it matter? We're both mules when it counts. He smiled. She'll be curious about the world. Want to see beyond these peaks? We'll have to let her go someday. Not for a while yet. No, not for a while. First she has to learn to walk, to shoot, to read sign and weather, how to birth a calf and dress a deer, how to make biscuits that don't break teeth. My biscuits are improving. Yes, now they only crack teeth instead of breaking them clean. She elbowed him gently. For that, you're teaching her to cook. I'll teach her the important things. Like what? Like how to spot a good man from a bad one, how to stand her ground, how to know when fighting's necessary and when walking away is the real strength. Good lessons, learned from experience. Emma fussed, and Maggie shifted her, began nursing again. Josiah watched, still amazed by the simple miracle of it. Life creating life, sustaining itself against all odds. "We did it," Maggie said softly. "We made it through." Beginning's the easy part. Now comes the living. Together. No other way I'd have it. As full dark settled over the mountain, they went inside. The cabin glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming. On the mantel, the tin box still sat Josiah's past, his first family. But now it shared space with new treasures: Maggie's mother's ring, saved from her flight; the first eagle feather Samuel had brought for Emma; Pike's confession, framed as reminder and warning. Past and present, loss and hope, all under one roof. All part of the story they'd tell Emma when she was old enough to understand. Josiah picked up his fiddle, an instrument that had gathered dust for 12 years. "Mind if I play might settle her." "Please, I didn't know you could." "Haven't in a long time. Might be rusty." But when he drew the bow across strings, the music came back like it had never left. An old mountain lullaby, sweet and simple. Emma's fussing quieted, her blue eyes finding the source of the sound. "That's beautiful," Maggie whispered. "Mary used to sing words to it, about sleeping safe under starlight, about morning always coming after the darkest night." "Sing them." So he did, voice rough with disuse but growing stronger. He sang to his daughter, both daughters, one in his arms through memory, one in Maggie's arms in truth. He sang to his wives, one lost to fever, one found through courage. He sang to the mountain that had sheltered him in grief and now cradled him in joy. And somewhere in that simple melody, Theodore Blackwood's shadow finally faded to nothing. The past released its grip, making room for the future, a future where Emma Rose McKenna would grow up free, loved and strong. The mountain kept its watch, ancient and patient. It had seen men come and go, seen dreams built and broken, but tonight it sheltered something precious, a family forged from loss, tempered by trial, and bound by choice rather than blood. In a cabin once filled with silence, music played and a baby slept, and two people who'd thought love was behind them discovered it had been waiting all along. Waiting for the right moment, the right meeting, the right wild courage to say yes to life again. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal, but below, in the warm circle of lamplight, human hearts beat with purpose, with hope, with the fierce joy of survival transformed into something more. They'd won, not just against the Blackwoods or Pike or the ghosts of their pasts. They'd won the harder victory, the one against despair, against giving up, against the voice that whispered it was safer to stay broken than risk healing. Emma Rose McKenna, born of violence but raised in love, would never know that voice. That was her parents' gift to her, a world where broken things could be made whole, where second chances bloomed like wildflowers after rain, where the mountain's strength could be borrowed by anyone brave enough to climb. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Thank you all for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Josiah and Maggie's journey from loneliness to love, from survival to family. Where are you listening to this story from? I'd love to know. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and let me know your thoughts on Emma Rose's future. Will she grow up to be as strong as her parents? What challenges might this mountain family face next? Share your ideas and let's discuss this tale of courage, redemption, and the power of choosing love over fear.